From shocking evidence of why the Great War started to a dark mystery in the Wasteland Explained, today I'm going to tell you 107 facts about Fallout, starting with a big one that begins the whole game lore. 1. The Great War was inevitable. It indirectly caused the end of the modern civilization in the Fallout universe. It was bound to happen eventually, and not in the way that you think. 2. Vault-Tec was going to destroy the world and was doomed the moment that Vault-Tec got the government an infinite supply of money to buy vaults. Hell, at some point Vault-Tec had more money than the whole government itself. 3. 2077 was a coincidence. Nuclear weapons were launched worldwide on October 23, 2077, and destroyed almost everything from cities to infrastructure, and the whole structure of government within hours. Plans existed to launch the bombs if China didn't, in order to guarantee the necessity of their vaults and reshaping the world to their image. 5. Vault-Tec. Government. In the end, what Vault-Tec wanted was control, as is shown in most of the vaults with all the social experiments. 6. Vault-Tec wanted to control how the world would develop after the nuclear war, but had plans to start it themselves if China didn't take the first step. 7. The government tried in his own way to create a plan to control the people after the war, but Vault-Tec had all the cards, with all the population living in vaults, and only a handful being completely clean. 8. The government was demoted to a small group, and Vault-Tec was the new government, deciding the fate of the whole population. 9. They overestimated by far the ability to control with what world was left behind, but the intentions were there, and plans were revealed in the TV series. 10. Society started rebuilding and voided Vault-Tec plans. In the aftermath of such a catastrophic event, attempts here and there, mostly scattered, no nation or union, even a system, only survival. 11. As silly as sounds, the bombs are nowhere near as bad as what happened inside the vaults, as these situations were planned by people pre-war. 12. Vaults were experiments chambers by the company of the same name. Vault-Tec was as far as anyone could be from the thoughts of genuinely caring. 13. Wanting to protect humanity was a ruse, with far more sinister plans than gaining the massive amounts of money they gained from building the vaults. 14. Only 14% of vaults were secure. Of the whole saga of Vault-Tec built around 122 vaults identified to today, with around 17 identified as control vaults. 15. 85% of the vault were only designed for normal life without any kind of twisted purpose, so as we can see with maths, the control vaults are less than the 20% of the whole total. 16. Maintaining the population untainted of radiation was an experiment by itself. The vaults were nothing more than playrooms for some mad scientists. 17. All the board members of Vault-Tec were in the loop for the end of the world. They were looking for a solution that caused almost the same damage as the disease, the nukes. 18. The vaults had purpose. We are talking about goals. Vault-Tec had the survival of humankind as the ultimate goal. 19. Goals were that the vault conditions would be safe and stable. The trick were the conditions to generate a result that Vault-Tec analysis deemed correct. 20. The presence of resources and a safe environment were for control, with everyone living there and literally nowhere to go. 21. A lot of experiments went wrong. You can even explore some vaults in the games. Most vaults had deliberated situations or experimental environments, but remain with everyone dead or abandoned. 22. I can argue that we had a fairly similar society, both in real life and the in-game one. All groups of people managed to develop technology and culture that at some point differed from our own. 23. World War II was different from Fallout. This is a twist. Fallout diverges to a different timeline after World War II, with everything diverging to nuclear power. 24. The Great War happens on an alternative timeline. 25. Fallout universe is way ahead of us. We know from diverse sources, and even we saw it on live once in Fallout 4, the bombs fell in 2077, but still looked like the 50s. 26. Something triggered the 50s. I know it sounds strange, but why the fixation on that era only? Why not the 80s or 90s? Something marked humanity at that time. 27. The society was fairly similar to the date of the 50s. We can see it in every book, miscellaneous things, some ghouls that talk about the past. 28. Even if the aesthetics match, they aren't the same 50s. They started developing really advanced nuclear technology, so it differed from the modern electronics of today, as you can see on the beginning of Fallout 4. 29. The aesthetics didn't even change that much, and a 50s or 60s feeling is everywhere. With just a twist, the technology is a lot more advanced, but never tells us why that era. 30. This technological and cultural mismatch shows how the history isn't that far, but evolved differently, confirming that a divergence from the real world happened. 31. The point of divergence was choosing nuclear tech and working with that as a base from real-world history. Well, it's where we are living right now, so you can just look around and see the differences. 32. Nuclear energy opens up a lot of questions. It is obvious that nuclear power became the backbone of the new world, changing the very foundation of energy usage. But how exactly? 33. The nuclear power source shifted eras. Way before the nuclear winter and the Great War, society shifted from the technology we all know to a particular and very dominant nuclear source of power. This diverged in all sorts of artifacts and inventions. 34. A different way of living. In a normal house with electricity and connected to a mainframe all the way to a central plant, every house ran on nuclear batteries, or if the necessity arose. 35. New devices emerged. Things like fusion cores, the ones from the power armors, cars, weapons, and all sorts of consumer products like your microwave, would have been powered by nuclear energy. Interesting, and to be honest, kind of nice. 36. Nuclear power was everything. Nuclear-powered devices are seen everywhere in the game, from the cells that you will get to sell later, all the way to the fusion cores that you can use to maintain your collection of power armors in top-tier shape. 37. The old generators of energy disappeared. The widespread use of nuclear-powered devices demonstrates that fossil fuels or renewables like hydraulic dams were inferior too. 38. As always, the human being, soon after achieving a good quality of life, started researching for weaponry, and that soon turned into a terrible idea. You can guess how that turned out to be. 39. Humanity and power. The only good things that humanity got were all the commodities that servobots could provide and a life full of automation, but the most progress was elsewhere, on the weaponry. 40. The power armor was the equivalent to having a machine gun with unlimited ammo in the Trojan War. Overkill was the rule for the US soldiers, so we can effectively say that the power armor drastically changed how wars were fought. 41. The US soldiers easily overpowered enemy entire forces during the Sino-American War. Alaska was the best example, but as you know, this didn't end here. We got an entire new conflict every couple of hours. Giant exaggeration. 42. As you probably already know, the power armor gave the soldiers superior strength and protection, shifting the military balance from having the most heavy weaponry and numbers to specialized full mecha squads obliterating anything that impeded the US passing around. 43. The US started to spread this type of war, and were willing to take drastic actions to secure resources, and so the war goes and goes, but this destroys the famous sentence of the whole saga, war. War never changes. 44. Greed destroyed the world. At some point between the power armors and the Sino-American War, the US started to shift their morals and objectives, all in the purpose of securing more resources and being more sadistic, but trust me, this was far from being the typical war and left the place in shambles. 45. Canada, an example of a destiny that was really bad. When they were occupied, martial law was applied, and they were used as a sort of barricade to protect the vital supply lines. As you can imagine, igniting tensions were boiling, and the nuclear apocalypse was like a curse. Everyone talked about the possibility, but never really began to understand the implications. 46. US was mad for power. You can see clearly that the extreme methods that the US used pushed an authoritarian regime. The resource scarcity was in the final instance what pushed the US government to lead the ultimate global conflict. But we are far from done, as this was the major precursor. 47. The Sino-American War. Without a doubt was the major precursor to the nuclear apocalypse. This was something that simply could not be undone. So the global conflict was on the horizon. 48. With the vast superiority of armament and soldiers, the US got the upper hand, but they had a rival, and that started what I could identify as the beginning of the end. 49. Sino-American War. This was the Great War before anyone could understand what this meant for life on planet Earth. The conflict between China and the US was what fed the global conflict to blow up. War destroyed everything, even the lives of those that started everything. 50. Both nations started the fight over supplies. The scope was first oil supplies, and then militarized their respective societies. And you can see how this developed in the games like Fallout 76. You can see the China bots with advertising, so you can get an idea of how they feed the information to their population. 51. Resources ran out. Supplies were the fight. Power happened to be a consequence of having them, but the principal part of the conflict started to shift from territories to resources. 52. Every moment, resources were less and less. The resources disappeared, and the aggression increased bit by bit. The nuclear winter was near, and the war became unavoidable. Oh boy. At this moment, they already were at war, just without nuclear bombs. 53. The world was not only destroyed by conflicts, this only ignited the tensions at a point that the bombs were not only a prelude, they were a reality. And with that, everything changed. Yes, even people. 154. The super mutants' origins. A lot of people, with me in that group too, didn't know that the super mutants were a thing even before the Great War, a result of experimentation on humans. The morals were off the charts. 55. The forced evolutionary virus entered into play, the tests were on humans, and the result? A big green behemoth with the DNA of a human. The existence of super mutants proves that the consequences of unethical experimentation are very real, and still I think that nobody paid the price. 56. F.E. HPV was inhuman. The sole existence of the forced evolutionary virus meant that the experimentation was unethical, as the only source for getting this serum is to test on humans. And we are talking about the pre-war period. Remember that after the bombs, the super mutants were around a long time before any human. 57. Pre-war was hostile too. Remember the whole premise of Fallout 1 to close this point in a good ribbon. A lot was destroyed by the bombs, but also a lot of experiments were let free. 58. The Brotherhood appeared in a world where power and technology were so tightly controlled. This group arose to ensure that technology didn't fall into the wrong hands. This shows us why groups like the most xenophobic group known by Fallout was also the safekeeping for humanity, or so they say that. 59. Brotherhood Safekeep Technology, formed for the sole purpose of avoiding another great war, but is a world divided by factions, so each one having their own vision for rebuilding, change this vision to accumulate the most powerful assets and avoid the others to get them. 60. This group was formed in the beginning by former US soldiers, the same soldiers that saw in the nearest position that a human could, the dangerous experiments before the war and the consequences of them. Still, this doesn't mean that everything is perfect. The higher moral of this group also comes with their own share of problems. 61. Safekeeping backfires. You can see their origin in the strict belief of the advanced technology that has to be controlled to avoid the same fate again, but they impeding progress for other factions didn't stop progress for themselves. Just remember, in a world like this one, it is easy to lose focus and start making mistakes. They have enormous machines just for war, so the history can be easily repeated. 62. In a world that is divided by factions, and with as many as the Wasteland can hold, each one holds a fraction of power, and the Brotherhood is just one of many. So each one having a vision means that the world has diverse possibilities for a future, or maybe one sole future. 63. The future of society. The post-war society was divided into multiple factions that at the same time pushed in different directions. In my most honest opinion, humanity is trying to rebuild without a shared vision. This is not entirely bad. The problem resides in the execution. If a faction doesn't like what others are doing, if we categorize it by a good thing, then they normally come and destroy. They don't try to pursue a better future. 64. Obviously, not everything is perfect. The future is impossible to calculate, and these values have been upheld in an uneven way, using them or not, to the benefit of a handful of individuals, with corruption at the order of day. But we have a far more diabolic faction. 65. The Legion Objective. We talk a lot about factions in the future, but what about the whole point of being in a faction, helping each other and pushing for the same beliefs as a group? 66. Caesar's Legion destroys to the millimeter, and it doesn't make it better. In fact, I think that they are even worse as a group. For starters, with slavery and having freedom to kill everywhere they go as a group, the only price? A small one. 67. You have to treat Caesar like a god, submit to his will, and follow all the requests he has. An impressive faction, too. If we ignore the fact that they use a lot of medieval weaponry, they are fairly strong, and working as a team make them so much dangerous, too. So, 68. The Institute Vision, the one and only big bad from Fallout 4. This secret faction is so strange and straightforward at the same time that it is easy to miss the whole point of their actions. 69. They basically want to evolve humanity to the next level by disappearing humans and making synths, but at the same time they need resources from the settlements they trade with in secret. So what's the deal? 70. They want to secretly live underground and maintain a secrecy level, but at the same time a plan begins to do exactly the contrary. All the actions they take backfires a lot ease, as they constantly attack settlements and humans, while on the other side trade and secure resources, but they use so much resources that is never enough. We have more to talk about them. The Controversial Institute. 71. Institutes backfire. They started kidnapping people in a random way because I cannot provide a pattern to analyze. And the craziest aspect, they kind of do nothing with it. They are replaced by synths, and they call it a day. 72. They are in your own settlements. Sometimes they attack you when a major group of synths also attacks, but that's all. No inside jobs or infiltration to weaken you. 73. By the moment that we explore the Commonwealth, everyone and their grandma knows about the Institute. They don't know the whereabouts or details, but they suspect or have heard Institute before. Trying to get a secret faction that will control the humanity process of evolution and having the fame of a pop star, well, the objective and the actions don't align. Now let's state some facts about the future. 74. Wasteland Future. As I explained, you can see factions with very different goals, visions, and how they want to build a society. The Legion wants to enslave everyone and make Caesar a ruthless leader of the whole world. Then, we have the Enclave with the plan to annihilate all life and only let those in vaults and themselves live, just for them to be the pure race. 75. In every game, we see a glimpse of the future. In some of them, certain factions disappears when they lose, like the Legion, for example. But we can see that they live in the TV series, so the Wasteland is doomed. at least until a unique faction arises and get everything under control. Almost impossible. And then we get the good guys like the Brotherhood or the NCR. The future is still blurry. 76. New California beliefs. We know by the moment of Fallout 4 that they are alright, or doing even better than alright. They are seeking to rebuild the old democratic system that worked so well in the past. Words straight from the faction. 77. They formed up in California. Yeah. The name speaks volumes. And as they aim for the restoration of the pre-war US government via election, a system of law, and even a new constitution, they aren't part of the Enclave or even believe in the same, yes, at a first glance. This exact belief in democracy and order is what allowed them to expand as fast as they have. At the same time, they are in constant fights with other more authoritarian factions like the Enclave and Caesar's Legion, in a sort of guerrilla fight. Nothing is as bad as the Great War, a brief duration for a global threat, October 2077, 78, NCR corruption. NCR wants to rebuild a government, but even ages before achieving a minimal part of that, multiple cases of corruption and abuse of power appeared, and the Institute, well, wants to replace every human with a synth for, well, reasons. Ask them, not me. 79. We don't see it directly, but between Fallout New Vegas and 4, the NCR gained so much force, and still you can hear that corruption has taken a hold on high ranks. Things like political power inside the faction is constantly getting bought, justice being balanced with money in the equation of law. I hope to see a better future on Fallout 5, but at this moment, these factions will never manage to unite the Wasteland, or they are doomed to fight a war that will outlast them. Well, the Legion will be dead way before that could be in plans, but still the question remains. But don't forget, we have a shadow on the horizon. 80. What is the Enclave? The beginning of the Enclave is linked to the ultimate goal that Vault-Tec had, control over the new society, but the government had different plans, a bit more conservative. Follow me on this. The Great War marked the beginning of this secretive and militaristic faction. In one way or another, is the only faction that is legitimate government of the US. This is founded by military leaders and pre-war government officials. Only people of high rank. They survived on isolated bunkers, so no Vault-Tec hands here. Most people members of this faction lived in an oil rig far away from everything that happened on the Wasteland. 81. Enclave, just legitimate US government. They truly believe that they are the rightful heirs to the US government, and in a certain way, you could argue that they are. And being the legitimate successors, they planned before the Great War to supervise the new humanity's arrival. Eventually, they felt that it was safe enough to move on and towards the rebirth of America, but all the time on that oil rig was not just for survival. They actually had the time to gain a technological edge. In the canon, they appeared between the defeat of Master and the start of Fallout 2, first appearing on California. And we get to the meat, the vision. 82. Enclave is faulty at core. Traveling to the roots of this faction, they are the pre-war government, and that gives them an edge. Remember that they didn't stay put and survive. They had everything to ensure their survivability ready, so they were preparing new technology to arrive with sufficient advantage and ensure the restoration of American ideals. 83. The only issue in terms of safekeeping the future of the whole Wasteland is that they are willing to use any means necessary to restore it, and that even means wiping the whole Wasteland clean. So now you see the problem. But while the Enclave sees itself as the savior of humanity, and oh boy, that is far, their authoritarian methods stand in contrast to factions like the New California Republic, who believe in, well, many things and don't do most of them. 84. How much time to destroy a planet? We all know about the Great War and just how much destruction it caused. We can explore that damage game by game. You can still see the harsh marks, centuries after the first bombs, but how long it lasted. 85. Remember that it began and ended on the same day, leading the world to global devastation and complete collapse of the modern civilization, and as we know it. October 2077? Yeah, we know that, but did you know that the whole exchange of bombs that changed the world forever only lasted 2 hours? 86. 2 hours to kill billions, annihilate entire cities, and destroy life as we know it for so long. The aftermath of the catastrophic event turned quickly to a survival. Everyone by themselves. Only the vaults safekeep a bit of the society as we knew it, and even them were scattered across the US, and even some information points to vaults across the globe. What could connect the past and present? Well, that's hard to answer, but I have one idea. 87. The hub was post-war. The Nexus was the thriving commercial center of the whole Wasteland, is supposedly located close to Barstow, and we know that it was in a city of sorts. We can see multiple pre-war structures here. However, even by appearance alone, the hub can be easily mistaken as a pre-war relic, and it's not, while it is never stated, you can see post-war construction. 88. In the Vault 13 timeline, it is revealed that the founders of the hub came from a vault. We never know any more details than that, and the whole topic is something that is never stated anywhere else. 89. Vault dwellers can live well outside. The hub became the biggest town around. If everyone came from the same place would be enormous, worse since the first day, and the future could only make it better if everyone worked at the same pace. The Wastelanders rely on small and more scattered settlements around, but still work at the same pace to maintain the place, and adding more to the history here raises one of the most iconic figures in Fallout, the Vault Dweller. 90. The Soul name points out that this person came from a vault, and that is correct. But from the eyes of the Wasteland, this person arrived from the Hub, and so the Hub gained that much status for future installments. Yeah, everything is great about the Vault Dweller. He helped shape the future of the Wasteland, and the world was in a minuscule amount, but was a better place. That doesn't help with the mutated beast, though. 91. Most creatures were pre-war. In the games, we can fight against numerous creatures, some really dangerous and other even intelligent to some extent, and we mistakenly think that the bombs did all the work for them to appear. Well, I have some really bad news about it. Some of them are the result of pre-war testings. Other were experiments with very specific purposes that the bombs let loose or gave them a push, but didn't create them. 92. A lot of nuclear tests were conducted in the California desert, others were happening in Nevada, but all led to the same horrific mutations in the local wildlife. Just to name some of them, the Deathclaws were just a type of species of large lizards, but with the exposition to radiation in secluded environments, transformed into monstrous-sized semi-dragons with those giant claws that give them the name. 93. The Mojave was the land of experimentation. The better example we have are the Cazadores, those giant venomous and fast-moving predators. They were researched and created in the Big Mountain Research Facility, starting from tarantula hawk wasps and mixing the DNA with other unspecified animals to get that unique characteristics, but at the time the game takes place, those are a major threat. 94. These enemies were originally intended as super soldiers, but escaped as is obvious. We may never know if the experiment was completed or not, but I am sure as hell that it failed. You can see vaults with terminals talking about the sort of experimentation. A lot of these experiments were concentrated in the Mojave Desert, and the forced evolutionary virus is known in the whole Wasteland as a product of a past time. The bombs only led them free. The Wasteland not only holds monsters, in some corners we have friendly faces too, most of the time. 95. Ghouls are pre-war narrators. I am not going to be the smart one saying that Fallout is unreal, but let me point out that the ghouls are a strange type of consequence to the nuclear winter. The way I see them, they work as a connection between the pre-war world and the Wasteland as we know it. The only character that we can control in the pre-war is the sole survivor, and the exploration of this world is heavily limited, so it's not the same. 96. In real life, the radiation would never mutate us or preserve a human through centuries. Radiation does the exact opposite. This shows us that Fallout wants to explore a sort of identity trauma and how a new species would survive, throwing also humans and super mutants in the mix. 97. Sane ghouls are also people. We can meet great people that are ghoulified. People like Raul Tejada or Hancock, humans that preserved their consciousness for centuries. But remember, these were ordinary humans once, and also adapted to a nuclear exposure for centuries. 98. The price to pay was the body. Every ghoul shares this pain. They are destroyed physically, and in some cases mentally, to like the feral ghouls. But I think that the reason for their existence is for having people that actually are living witnesses to the collapse of humanity. So having NPCs talking about the pre-war world in detail pushes the narrative to the next level, while maintaining a certain connection with the line of logic of this world. 99. Everything explained shows information about the ghouls being symbolic bridges between the old world and the Wasteland. They are reminders of what human greed with a lot of weapons can do. Sadly, not everyone got this fate. We know that feral ghouls exist too. With everything that sane ghouls stand for, they are discriminated against a lot too. 100. The Wasteland is anti-ghoul. We can see on games like Fallout 3 or even New Vegas that the ghouls are routinely banned from the settlements. Others with less luck are hunted just because they look wrong, and I understand that a bit, but we are talking about xenophobia on a post-apocalyptic world. The world is crazy even after ending one time. 101. The hatred toward ghouls exposes how quickly the survivors recreate the old world discrimination. They only changed objectives. The sane ghouls are denied entry without taking a second glance to the skills or knowledge that can be used to influence the settlements. 102. Vault dwellers see ghouls and outside people the same. This prejudice parallels what the first protagonist, the Vault Dweller, felt after doing so much for their vault and getting kicked just because he was contaminated, so war never changes, and neither the people. 103. We can take in the same group, the sane ghouls, the good synths, and most vault survivors. We can get a big group that is refused by the Wasteland, even inside their same groups. I still hate you, Overseer of Fallout 1 and 3. 104. The Nuka-Cola song was inspired in the 50s American settings, also resembling that everything from the 50s to the 2077 was the same for almost a century. 105. Grognak the Barbarian is a direct reference to all those fictional comic characters around Conan, and is found across the series, even has a certain special set of perks tied to his name. 106. While we know the Wasteland only as the American destroyed yard, it is mentioned mentioned across different games that China, Canada, or Australia also are sharing a similar destiny. China, being the most prominent as multiple enemies from this country, has appeared in 76 and Fallout 3, 107. And for the last one, we saved Dogmeat. Dogmeat is the only character that has appeared through every Fallout game, except 76 kinds of, but still remains a fan's favorite, so we hope to see him in next entries. If you enjoyed this video and want to see Fallout 4's creepiest locations explained, click on the video on the screen.